The other day, my son, Jonathan, and I were talking about a simple choice that I needed to make. It was so trivial right now that I really can't even remember what it was. I needed to choose between and B or something like that, between chicken and beef, or I don't know, hot and cold, or chocolate and vanilla, or now or later. I don't honestly remember what it was. What I do remember is that the choice seemed to be harder than it should be. It shouldn't be this hard, I remember thinking. Maybe I even said it out loud. Maybe I was suffering from decision fatigue. You remember what that is, right? That term, decision fatigue, was coined a couple of decades ago by a journalist, and it captures an experience that we've all had. The more decisions we make in a short period of time, not habits, but conscious, focused decisions in a short period of time, like a day, the harder they are to make the longer we go doing that. After a long day, for example, at work, you need to decide what you're going to eat for dinner, and your mind just explodes. You just lock up. So anyway, back to my epic challenge. Although I don't remember it, let's just say that it was a choice between two really good options. It was something like, schedule this thing for Thursday of next week, or schedule that same thing for Friday of next week. It was something like that. But I just couldn't decide. It's like my brain froze. So John said to me, well, here, flip a coin. That seemed a little odd to me, but I thought, okay, all right. And I called heads when it was in the air for option Thursday, let's say. And as the coin landed, it came down heads up in favor of Thursday. And John interrupted before I said anything and quickly said, all right, right away, how do you feel about that choice? Well, I remember whatever that choice was, that I didn't like the way it came up. I didn't like it at all, because I didn't want Thursday or Friday. Neither option worked for me. And he said, there's your answer. Sounds like your choice isn't what day, but whether it should happen at all. Isn't that intriguing? When we're forced to choose, when we constrain our choice, even by a silly coin toss, what we really want presents itself. So that's the point of this conversation with you today. Forced choices, constrained choices are a gift. They will reveal to us what really matters. They also will reveal whether what matters to us should matter. So to get really personal with you, because you know it's just you and I here, that's the beauty of watching this on YouTube, is no one's looking over your shoulder. It's just you and I. Do you know what matters? Do you know what matters to you? Here's an extra credit question. Does what matter to you matter? Are you building your life and your leadership and your team and your enterprise on things that matter? We call those things values. Our values are the engines that drive us. They're the answer to the question, what really matters here? Well, that's a value. So you're a leader, or you're a manager or a supervisor. You're somebody whose people follow, whether it's because of your position or because of your vision or maybe your character, your personality, maybe it's all that stuff. You're a leader. And you know that leadership is hard. One of the times in which it's the most difficult is when we need to choose between a good thing and a competing thing that is also good. Choosing between good and bad, that's not hard at all. Choosing between good and good, now that's really hard. But that is why we need leaders. The choice between two good yet competing values is precisely the arena in which you and I as leaders do our work. Let me illustrate it. There's an ambulance company, for example, and the medics need to arrive on scene quickly. The value is speed. They also need to arrive on scene. They need to get there. That value is safety. They're both important, speed and safety. But what if you couldn't have both? Then what? Welcome to leadership. Or here's another example. You're significantly understaffed in your organization. It's causing a lot of problems. People are working lots of overtime. They're tired, they're burning out, and the solution is hire more people. But those new people that you will hire, they're going to need a lot of training. Well, who's going to train them? Your burnt out staff, your burnt out, overworked team. That's who's going to train them. Welcome to leadership. So I've had the privilege over the years of working with national publishing companies, really specifically in the newspaper industry. It's been several decades that I've had that fun in working in that world. That's been changing a lot. And I remember a few years ago, a meeting that I was able to participate in with the executive team and the board members of a very large newspaper conglomerate that you'd probably recognize. And during that meeting, a debate erupted. The editorial teams of one of that newspaper conglomerate's regional newspapers had uncovered some disturbing practices in a particular industry, and they were ready to publish this piece, or these several articles it was going to be. That industry was also responsible, wait for it, for nearly 40% of their regional newspaper's advertising revenue. To make matters even more complex, the circulation of that paper and the readership of that paper was dropping like a rock. So the conversations, as you can well imagine, got really heated. Decisions had to be made. Publish or profits. Welcome to leadership. When we're forced to choose between two good things, it's like a stress test for our value structures. It exposes what some people call our trust structures. It answers the question, what in reality matters to me? And since we do our values, that is, we turn our values into behavior, into action, into results, moments like these choices are very revealing. It's just like a stress test to the body. These hard choices reveal where we're strong and where we're healthy and where we're not. That newspaper publishing company chose to bury the story so they wouldn't anger their largest advertiser. That meant that they effectively had to rewrite their mission statement. Well, the one on the wall stayed the same. The one on their letterhead stayed the same, but the one in people's minds and hearts changed. Their stated values and then their mission that came from it, what we call their espoused values, didn't match their enacted values. What they said and what they did were out of alignment. Now, you've known since middle school that if someone says one thing and they do another, believe what they do, not what they say. If someone shows you by their actions who they are, believe them. Okay, so enough about newspapers and ambulances and coin tosses. What about you? Are you facing any difficult choices right now? If so, here's some pro tips that may help you. And I've learned these the hard way, so maybe I can help you a little bit here and save you a little frustration and pain and bad decisions and a few bad experiences. So here's some pro tips. 1, recognize this choice between good and good as an opportunity. While it's really uncomfortable, this kind of decision is leadership. So see it for what it is. Making decisions that cannot be made by simply measuring your way to an answer is leadership. If you can measure it, the decision is simpler. If you can measure it, it's management. If you're trying to decide what's the fastest way to do something, well, measure it, get your answer. What's the safest way? Well, measure it, there's your answer. That's all management. But when you have to choose between fast or safe, that's leadership. Delight our biggest advertiser. Easy, measure it, go off to work, do it, right? Publish the truth, the facts. Easy, measure it, manage it. But when you have to choose between the two, that's leadership. Recognize it as the opportunity that it is. Here's the second idea. Ask yourself, what matters more than both of those choices? That's what we call a core value. Don't decide until you're crystal clear on that. Here's a question. Are your core values about comfort or something related to comfort, or about adventure and the impact that that can bring? Are they about selfishness or are they about service? Are those core values about investing for later or about consuming for now? Here's the third idea. Take a trip. Take a trip in your mind into the future. Leaders, after all, are people who think backwards about time. We think from tomorrow back to today, and we change what we do today in light of where we want to be tomorrow. So ask yourself, what will matter tomorrow? What will matter next year? What will matter in 5 years? 4, here's the fourth idea, and this is a big one. Is this choice right? There's not a lot of talk about that anymore, especially in the public arena, and I think that's tragic. But just because you don't talk about what's right and what's wrong, what is true and what is false, doesn't mean that it somehow all just went away. If you ignore gravity and pretend it doesn't exist, you'll do so at your own peril. You don't have to believe in gravity. Gravity believes in you. It'll take care of that problem right away. Believe in an illusion, no matter how many other people believe it, you're still going to suffer. A hungry grizzly bear doesn't care if you think you have superpowers and you think you can fly, and all your friends think you have superpowers and you can fly. The reality is, you can't. In fact, reality is a little bit of a bitch if you pretend it doesn't exist. Ignoring what is right and what is true has consequences. Reality is what we run into when we're wrong. So take a breath. Is this choice right? All right, so back to you. What do you think? Are you facing a choice between 2 or more competing good values? The decision hard to make? Does it feel like what Winston Churchill said back in the day, this is a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside of an enigma? Well, that's a good thing, because that's where leaders live. That's you. It's your chance to clarify what really matters to you, to your team, to your organization. It's your chance to create the future, to deliberately head in a direction that will not happen unless you lead. So, do the work. Pause. Don't blow past this opportunity because you're too tired or too afraid or too anxious. Discover the best decision with this thought experiment. Remove the constraint of time. If you had more time, what would you decide? Think about that for a hot minute. Or remove the constraint of money. If money were not an issue, what would you decide? Or remove the constraint of insight. If I just knew A or B or C, what would I decide? And then how can I get that insight? Or remove the constraint of placating other people. If I didn't have to worry about other people's feelings or their reaction, what would I decide? Well, here's another thought experiment. Remove the constraint of your own appetites. If I wasn't hungry and angry and lonely and tired, what would I decide? Did you notice that's actually an acronym called HALT? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. HALT. Make a decision. Remove 2 or 3 of those and then make a decision. Finally, here's another thought experiment. Remove the constraint of threats. If my status wasn't threatened, what would I decide? Or if my certainty or my autonomy or my relationships with a few people that matter, or my sense of fairness and justice, if those things were not threatened, what would I decide? By the way, notice that's also an acronym, SCARF. Status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness or relationships, and fairness. So, you can tell these decisions can't be made in a split second. Flipping a coin, like John asked me to do, is kind of revealing. What it'll reveal is what I prefer. When if it comes up heads and I really wanted tails, that's probably going to be quite revealing, but it may not help me lead. Welcome to leadership. See these choices for what they are, lean in, embrace the opportunity, and lead. There we have it. Here's to you. You're doing good work. Leadership is hard, but don't make it harder than it needs to be. Cheers.